The trust of the innocent is a liar's most useful tool, and as the devil, I advise you take that advice. Hello everyone, it's the devilish side of Sarah here, ready to bring you another spooky review. This time we're covering The Black Phone 2, the sequel to the 2021 surprise hit, The Black Phone. But before we begin, please give us a like, share and subscribe to the channel, and hit that hype button if you're on mobile. Alright, get your snow gear ready, it's about to get chilly. Now the first film ended when the young protagonist escaped the basement dungeon and killed his captor, a happily ever after in a kind of traumatic way. So when they announced that they were making a sequel to it, I was kinda surprised, because it felt unnecessary, and since the main villain is dead, where would they even take the story? A prequel would also be pointless given that the plot of the first film revolved around Finney talking to lingering ghosts of all the other kids who had died, so we already know what happened to them. The sequel, however, basically just takes the entire concept of A Nightmare on Elm Street and revolves it around phones being some type of gateway from the dream realm to the real world. It also alters some of the previously established story, especially concerning the mother of Gwen and Ben, and introduces a very generic reason for why the grabber is able to come back. A little bit typical then. Okay, spoilers are now inbound, and I'll give you a moment to skip to the timestamp on the screen if you wish to avoid any. Okay, still here? Let's dig a little deeper. The film opens up on some kind of frozen tundra, with a phone booth in the middle of nowhere with a ski lodge nearby. A young girl is on the phone talking to someone, having found the number carved in some ice. Ominous music plays before the phone makes a strange buzzing sound, and then cut to the opening credits. We then move on to a much older Ben who is beating the shit out of some blonde kid, telling him to stay away from her. We also meet up with another returning character, Ernesto, who invites Ben and his sister to a Duran Duran concert. When he teases her about it being a date, she calls him a jizz mopper? Now, in both Stephen King and his son Joe Hill's writing, they often have these little kids say some weird shit. But coming out of the mouth of these 20-something playing high schoolers, it just feels a little bit too cringe. The relationship between Ben and his dad seems to have gotten much better since the first film, but something is up with Ben nonetheless. He does a bunch of mushrooms, smokes some weed, and just keeps seeing the grabber, traumatised by the memories of what happened. His sister is of course concerned for him, but he's trying to shove it way down, while she's definitely more of a sharer. We get a weird flashback scene for the Alpine Lake camp where bunches of kids pile into the cabins and then go sledding and whatnot. It then turns dark and creepy as images of the kids being chased in the darkness by a man with a hunting knife who eventually catches up to them and stabs them to death. They are then thrown into the frozen lake where one of the boys comes back to life and scratches the letter W into the ice before fading back into the darkness. The sister suddenly springs awake as if she's having this nightmare and hears a phone ringing in the house. She goes to investigate and ends up staring out the door when her brother wakes her up from some kind of sleepwalking trance. He remarks that she is ice cold. Gwen's life at school since rescuing her brother using her visions has basically gone downhill, as all the other pretty girls call her a witch and treat her like an outcast. What bitches. Ernesto, however, is heavily into her and even brings her some Santa Maria cards and these cards are kinda like tarot cards. If you don't remember, Ernesto is Robin's younger brother, one of the kids who was kidnapped by the grabber and unfortunately killed. Wherever the siblings go, especially the brother, a phone rings nearby. Not surprising given the title of the film. They had to somehow shoehorn phones into it. I wonder if this had been set in modern day, if it would be cell phones. Maybe we'll find out since they have already greenlit a Black Phone Part 3. More nightmare visions plague Gwen and the brother as these kids scratch letters into the ice, giving them clues about the return of the killer. I'll give the film this: when it goes into these kind of dream world stalking scenes, they film it using an old retro VHS camera, giving it this grainy home movie look, disconnecting it from reality. That is pretty cool. In one of these dreams, Gwen finally picks up the phone, and it's that girl from the beginning of the movie, Hope Adler. So basically, Hope is also having these dreams, but in hers, it's numbers carved into the ice, which eventually allows her to call Gwen. In Gwen's dream, it's letters, which eventually spells out WBH. The phone call cuts out, and suddenly the grabber's dead brother appears behind her and warns her that she shouldn't be here. She then snaps back to reality when her brother finds her in the grabber's old house in the basement dungeon. While talking to her brother, we find out something else about Hope, that she's actually Gwen and Ben's mom. Long story short, her mom also had psychic abilities, which also got passed down from generation to generation amongst the women in the family, and that back then she already knew about the grabber and had tried hunting him, which ultimately got her killed. Which, timeline-wise and age, it doesn't add up, we don't think, but whatever, we'll drop that. So it's off to Alpine Lake for the siblings under the guise that Gwen is going to be working at the camp as a counsellor. Ernesto joins them on the trip as well. The road trip is marked with a lot of weed smoking by Ben, while they also listen to another brick in the wall, a fitting song given it's about dealing with unresolved trauma. When they make it to the camp, a blizzard traps them, but at least they have company. They meet Armando and Mustang, who called all the other campers and employees and warned them not to come because of the storm. But it was too late to reach Gwen and Ben, so they prepped the boys in the girls' cabins for each of them. Of course, as soon as night falls, the phone calls begin, and the ghosts start appearing. Ben answers the call and is basically responsible for the grabber being able to come into the real world through the connection to him and all the other dead kids he's killed there. And Gwen starts seeing those very same dead kids who are trying to attack her. I'm not quite sure if they're trying to attack her, but if they're trying to warn her, they are going about it in the very wrongest of ways. I'll say this as well, while some of them are a bit flimsy with the CGI, the gore effects are pretty gruesome. For decades, Hollywood has had issues with showing kids die, especially in horror films. So to see so many having had truly terrifying and cruel fates bestowed upon them makes it even more horrific. That feeling in the pit of your stomach, what horrors those poor kids went through. Yeah, that would be horrific. While her brother is dismissive of the dreams and whatnot, Ernesto is Gwen's knight in shining armour, wrapping his arms around her and holding her tight to comfort her and listen to her bare her soul to him. They do have an awkward moment when he claims it's hot that she talks to Jesus. And it would be even hotter if she said it the Hispanic way. Okay. Over the next few days, the trio investigate what they can about the grabber and his connection to the place. We also get to meet Kenneth and Barbara, two others who had signed up to be counsellors as well. Barbara is kind of a bitch. A very holier than thou. I should also point out, Alpine Lake is a Catholic camp. So she's holier than thou. Ugh, can't stand people like that. Every so often, the payphone would ring, and either it would be one of the kids or the grabber himself, giving Ben clues on where to look for the bodies. Again, much like the first film, the grabber is very manipulative. And kind of like the film Sinister, the evil entity uses the children to lure its very unsuspecting prey into a trap, which then only serves to help bring it closer into the real world. And just like Freddy Krueger, through the power of his descendants who are still alive, and all the souls he took prior to his death, it gave the Grabber a kind of fucked up demon immortality. And also carrying on with a Nightmare on Elm Street comparison, the Grabber is eventually able to sort of come into the waking world and physically attack Gwen, throwing her around the room. The others rush to her aid, but they do not see him. However, they just see her flying across the room, being choked and slammed into things. That would be creepy. Now, I think this was only able to happen because of Gwen's dreams and her constant sleepwalking, as when they are awake and alert, he doesn't have any power. Not yet, anyway. When they all have a meeting, it comes out that everyone here has at some point or another seen or heard something creepy, whether it's the ghost kids or some mysteriously masked figure. Dun dun dun! Not me. Well, back in 1978, the Grabber worked as a maintenance man at the camp, and he was nicknamed Wild Bill Hickok because of the way he wore his tool belt like a gunslinger and his long hair. WBH. Since Armando was around during that time and knew him, his details places that Bill would like to go and hang out at, and trails he'll take and so forth, and they develop a kind of search pattern to find the bodies of the dead kids. But the longer that Ben and Gwen are here, the stronger the Grabber gets, and now he's even able to torment the others working there. Through their dream psychic ability powers, Gwen and her mom Hope work together to add up all the clues on where all the kids' bodies are located and how to put a stop to the Grabber basically resurrecting himself. Gwen also finds out a new truth, that Hope didn't kill herself. The Grabber caught her investigating him and made it look like she did. Gwen encounters a demon spirit of the Grabber in this dream world and has to play a little cat and mouse. It's unclear that if you die in the dream, whether you die in real life or not, but she ain't taking that chance to find it out. While still in the dream world, she also comes across Armando, who's still in the real world, breaking open the ice on the lake as he found one of the bodies. There's a lot of similarities to Freddy Krueger here, isn't there? But the Grabber follows, traps Gwen in the phone booth, and then using an axe breaks the ice behind Armando so he falls into the icy water and drowns. He then turns his gaze on Gwen and starts fucking her up. Death by 1,000 cuts. Back in the real world, Ben, Ernesto and Mustang do whatever they can to wake her up and tell her to fight back. Suddenly, Gwen goes full Akira in the dream world. With super psychic abilities channeling her inner Jean Grey, she knocks him down and then wills herself up to wake up. The gang then run out to the ice and manage to save Armando. Somehow he didn't drown or get hypothermia. On top of that, the dad also just shows up on a snowplow because of reasons, and we get a big emotional breakdown exposition dump to get the audience up to speed just in case they have been lost. The next morning, using the plough and some sled dogs, they clear the snow off the frozen lake and start checking inch by inch for the bodies frozen underneath, but to no avail. You know, it's kinda gotta suck that in order to use her powers, Gwen has to basically make herself go to sleep. This allows her to flash back through and see the dead kids, as well as the Grabber. Ding ding ding, it's time for round 2. Kenneth gets an axe in the shoulder, Barbara gets her nose smashed, and then the two get scalped with one big swipe of the hatchet. But they're alive for now. Fuck, I wouldn't want to be alive. The Grabber then attacks Ben while Ernesto gets Gwen's sleeping body out of the area. I'll remind you though, none of the others can see this guy. Gwen, having dove into the ice hole, finds another body and brings it to the service. She then challenges the Grabber using scripture. The dead kids rise up and take hold of the Grabber, and Gwen delivers a crucial blow by slamming that hatchet, blade first, into his face. Woo, go Gwen. And then, even though Ben can't see him, but he can, he grabs the Grabber's head and slams it repeatedly into the ice. and Dream Gwen uses the hatchet to chop him into little pieces. The kid then pulls what's left of him under the water into the darkness. And the film ends with him basically turning into a giant popsicle. Ernesto and Gwen have their first kiss, and Armando's calling the parents of the dead kids to give them some closure. The phone booth rings one more time, and Gwen answers. It's her mom, who says goodbye and also finally gets to rest. Cut to black. Aw. And that wraps it up. This film didn't really do anything new or say anything substantial. It feels a bit more like an extended epilogue to the first film, rather than a noteworthy sequel. And while it doesn't have a post-credits stinger at the end, the grabber is definitely not defeated. He's just temporarily halted until, of course, a third film comes out in a year or so. He's also not really an iconic villain, mostly because the film franchise is now more or less a cross between Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street, which already have their own iconic villains. Was it scary? Not really. And while the effects were mostly well done, it's nothing we haven't seen in 100 different supernatural horror films over the last decade or so. We give the film a solid 6 out of 10. The actors did their best, but the story just wasn't worth the hype. I want to thank you all for checking out the video though, and what did you think of the film? Did you think it was better than the first one? Please let us know in the comments below, we love hearing off you. If you enjoyed our content, please give us a like, share and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to stab that bell icon to stay up to date with all our latest releases. If you're on mobile, please make sure to hit that hype button, just swipe right on the comments, we greatly appreciate it. I have been your host Sarah, and thank you for being here with me today. I hope you have the most gorgeous day. Take care and goodbye. And happy Halloween if it's Halloween. I can feel my mask every time I talk. The mask. I can feel it.